And we are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dare to Dream. Hooray! We have got our fantastic live virtual studio audience tuning in from Bushy, tuning in from all over northwest London to hear an amazing speaker tonight. We have got a real treat lined up for all of us. This is going to be very, very special. The origin of this series was as a response to everything that's been going on over the last few weeks in our holy land. And it's been difficult for all of us over here, not knowing how to, or not necessarily knowing how best to interact with the events as they unfolded. We feel so proud of the way that our Israeli Defense Force is able to navigate its way through very difficult situations, and keeping all of our brothers, sisters, cousins, and friends safe over in Eretz Yisrael. And we thought, instead of going down an advocacy route, instead of going down an Israeli education route or a political route, whatever it might be, we thought that it would be very special to line up three incredible speakers with stories of their own heroism, fighting for our country, fighting to protect our people. And we kick off tonight with Rami Sherman. In 1976, as many of us may even remember, Operation Entebbe happened, trying to save the 248 passengers who had been hijacked by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine on an Air France Airbus. And it was Rami Sherman's responsibility as the operations officer to help steer the success of this operation. And we are delighted to welcome Rami tonight. He's going to talk to us about the mission. He's going to talk to us about why it's still relevant. He's going to talk to us about his message to the world. And we are so excited to hear you, Rami. Welcome to Bushy, all the way from Eretz Yisrael. It is 10:36 at night for Rami, but we're so grateful that you could join us. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Rami Sherman.
Well, good evening to all of you. It's always surprising me the way that people represent myself. I'm a simple person. I'm not a hero, and I did what usually most of the soldiers in Israeli army probably respond the same as I did. Just by luck or maybe by his decision, I took part in the operation. And now, less than a month, the anniversary, the 45 years since the operation. 45 years passed. It's a very long years in life, and it's very long year in the history of Israel and the history of our nation around the world. But still, it's always a question, why this operation is so much still relevant? Still, people would like to hear this story. What is in the story? Not only what happened in the operation. And I will try to bring some idea, some thought. By the end of the 45 minutes or so, I would be happy to share, to listen to you, to answer the question you might be ask me about the operation. So directly to the last week of June 1976, we were prepare ourselves on Sunday morning, 27th of June, to go down to Sinai Desert. We were in a very small unit, only 50, 60 soldiers, not more than that, a few other supporters, and then at 12:30, the bell rang. And for us, when the bell rang, was a sign that there is a terror attack somewhere in Israel. And if the bell rang, we should be ready in 15 minutes to be either on the track to go somewhere close by, or to wait on the airbase to the helicopter to take us far away from our base. We were centered in the middle of the next town to Tel Aviv, Petah Tikva. And the bell rang, and we didn't know what happened. And the only news which arrived was that there was a plane who hijacked on a flight from Athens to Paris. That's all. So we thought what we have to do on such a situation. It's a far away. It's not something that we should be ready. And we move on with our duty to go down to Sinai Desert to do other secret mission for the security of the state. If I'm going back 3 hours back, at 9 o'clock, 248 passengers from different countries, they walk into Airfront Flight 139. The captain of the flight was Michel Bacos. I will mention him later. 248 passengers. They were from different countries, mostly not from Israel, mostly non-Jews. All people, Orthodox Jews, family with babies, young Israel who just finished their service. Between them was a big group from Israel and abroad of Holocaust survivors. 76, it's only 30 years after the end of the World War II, and still a lot of Holocaust survivors, they were alive and active around the world. Everyone with his plan, everyone with his idea what will be in the next 3 hours flight from Tel Aviv. We stop over in Athens and then land in Paris. Only 3 hours. As the plane landed in Athens, about 35 or so passengers, they walk out from the plane, and about the same number walk into the plane. Between them was 4 passengers. They arrived from the flight from Singapore, is a stopover in Bahrain, and they prepare to take the flight from Athens to Paris. As they walk in, the old lady started to shout, "They are terrorists, they are terrorists. Don't give them right to be on a plane." Quite surprised that someone worry about something. They walk in with the heavy bags. At 76, hardly any security in the airport, especially in Athens, and they could walk in with a gun very easily. At 12:30, the plane took off from Athens, and after only 10, 12 minutes, the force stood up. 2 of them took the gun from the bag and ran into the cockpit and told the captain, Michel Bacos, "You shouldn't talk with anyone unless we will tell you what to say. If not, we should." And the 2 others, man and woman, German citizen, talking German, they took the gun and told the passengers in a German accent, "Take your passport up," and they collected all the passports immediately. They told the passengers, nobody allowed to talk with anybody, nobody allowed to move from his seat, nobody allowed to go to the toilet freely, and if not, we should. It was man and a woman from a German terrorist group, Badr Meinhof group. The 2 others, they were Palestinian, 4 terrorists. told to innocent passengers. Might be we kill you. That is the first action which make different war and terror. If someone has the possibility to kill innocent people like us, for me that means a terror. To create fear, to go into the plane, to go to in the street in Jerusalem or in London or in New York, that is terror. At the 70s was a lot of terror group all around Europe and out of Europe as well. It wasn't only Palestinian. It was in Germany, Bader-Meinhof, in Italy, the Red Brigade, in Ireland, the IRA, in Japan, in South America, Carlos. All of them controlled by Russia to create tension in the West. Probably you remember that. I just like to put light on that. It wasn't just a conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. It was a conflict around the world. And the PLO, the Palestinians, took part on that. And they had a coalition with a different group and support each other. A year before, a group of 5 Germans tried to rocket El Al flight to Kenya, and the Mossad found that, and they caught the 5 Germans, and they brought them secretly to Israel. And it took them 1 year to create a new operation to release their friend from a jail. Of course, they didn't know that they are in Israel. They thought they are in Kenya. So that was the background of this terror attack. It's always something like that. After 3 hours around the Mediterranean without talking with anyone, they landed in Benghazi, in Libya, middle of the ground, no air condition. They got only fresh water, the toilet blocked. One English lady, which held a double passport, she was on her way to London to a funeral of her mother. She immigrated to Israel in the 60s, and she told the terrorists, I am pregnant and I started to bleed and I must see doctor. And somehow the terrorists accepted and took her to the hospital in Benghazi. The next day, the English ambassador arrived and brought her to London, and she was interviewed by the English intelligence force, and she was the first one which told us that there is German terrorists in the plane. Sometime lady took a risk and she succeeded. And she brought a very important information just from the beginning. What is funny on that lady, during the 60s was a very good relation between Uganda and Israel. And Idi Amin was very welcome to Israel, and he was visited Israel many times. The Prime Minister of Israel visited Uganda. And every time when he was in Israel, she was the follower, doctor, and nurse staff to give him a good medical support. Sometimes life looked very strange. After many hours of negotiation, because Muammar Gaddafi afraid that if he will give the plan, the French plan, to take off from Benghazi, he will break the good relation with French. But as the terrorists told them that they're going to explode the plane refueled, and at 9:30 they took off towards Africa. down South Africa. Nobody knew the direction. We haven't got any idea that by the early next day, the plane will land in Entebbe. We didn't know that Idi Amin was involved with all the operation. We were quite surprised that Idi Amin, Uganda, sovereign country in the UN, gave the terrorists permission to land in Entebbe. At Monday, 3 a.m. in the morning, they landed in Entebbe. Immediately, they surrounded by Ugandan force and more terrorists who wait to them in Uganda. Quite surprised. It wasn't only the 4 terrorists who did everything. It was extra force who wait in Uganda to the plane to come down. After another 5 hours on the ground, a very humid weather, 8 o'clock in the morning, a convoy of black Mercedes and 2 Land Rover Jeep arrived, and as they stopped under the plane, a big man went out. Idi Amin arrived, and for the next 4 hours, he never woke up into the plane to us passengers, innocent people, as I said before. We can help you in something. No food, no water, the toilet blocked, no air condition, a lot of mosquitoes, and he was talking with the terrorists and his force. At noon, they told to go out from the plane, and they walked into the old terminal, which was about 200 meters from the plane. They walked between the 2 rows of Ugandan soldiers. As they arrived to the hall, what they found there, an empty room, very dirty room, no toilet, no electricity, no water, no chairs, nothing, empty, dirty room. And as the last one walked in, the door closed. Immediately, people started to smoke, of course. Immediately, people start to argue on little things. People from different parts of the world, they talk different language. They had different needs. Of course, they start to argue on very little things. The tension rises up. And then later, the Ugandan threw into the room mattress, blanket, sofa, not enough to everyone. So they start to argue which one used by whom. And then 2 teenagers arrived, and they supplied the hostages 3 meals a day, very basic food. The Orthodox Jews never ate the meat. They tried to keep what is the Jewish rules, the kosher food, and they didn't eat all the week the meat. Michel Bacos wrote to one of the hostages that he became friend of it, that because you are the Orthodox Jews kept your rules, probably it's helped us to bring us back safely home. And he was a Christian, but somehow he supports so strongly the hostages and later the Israel. I will share with that. I will share you with that. The next day, after one night only, in the morning, Ugandan soldiers walk into and smash a small hole in the wall. And then, in the middle of the day, 4 original terrorists arrived, put on the table all the passports they collected, and immediately, without any word, they started to read the name of the Israeli first, and told to each one of the Israelis to go to the other side of the wall. They walk on their knee because the wall was very narrow. Some of the Holocaust survivors, they thought maybe they are going to be killed on the other side, and they try to escape from the hole. The terrorists ran after them and brought them back. One of the Auschwitz survivors from Israel told the German terrorists, I survived Auschwitz, and all the year I told to my children, today there is a new German. They are not like the Nazis. If I would be back home, what word I use to tell to my children? And the German terrorists in 76, 30 years after the end of the Holocaust years, told him, his face laughing, today you are the Nazi in the world. And then he took his gun and hit him on his face. And I put light on that because one reason. In many cases today, many people criticize Israel. I promise to each one of you that we are far away of being the Nazis. We did a lot of mistakes. Sometimes there is a reason to criticize Israel. Maybe we can defend ourselves in a different way. There is no plan to kill systematically any Palestinian, anyone. And I sometimes wonder why so many Jews say to each other and finger them, you are Nazi. I wonder what happened to us. How come we so quick forgot what happened between 39 and 45 in Europe? How come? But maybe that is a human being to forget the bad memory. Maybe, I don't know. It took 2 hours for the selection, and we know the meaning of the word selection very clearly. When in the big room was 140 non-Jews, a few they were Jews, but mostly non-Jews. And on the small room was mostly Israeli, but Jews from different parts of the world. 105 innocent Israeli Jews and Jews from the world. As that information spread over, French government announced immediately, we are dealing of releasing all the passengers, not only the non-Jews. Wednesday afternoon, 2 Air France flights arrived to Entebbe. Nobody knew that the French government could be so cynic. And they took back to Paris the 140 non-Jewish passengers. And in Entebbe, left 105 hostages, Jews from Israel and Jews from the world. And Michel Bacos, together with the 12 aircrew of the flight, the original flight, decided to stay with the passengers. I think his decision to stay in a darkness week, it's one of the light of human being, of solidarity, of support the hostages, they could do almost nothing for themselves. And he couldn't know. Maybe he will be the one that the terrorist will kill. But he decided to stay with his passengers, with the Jewish passengers. On Wednesday night, the Israeli government understood that is a question of Israel from now on to take response on the situation. But it was a very difficult decision. First of all, the distance from Israel to Entebbe, it's only 4,000 kilometers. It's too long to send force, to prepare something, to cross enemy countries. Difficult to bring extra force in case something getting wrong. Second, we knew that there is a short time. The terrorists gave an ultimatum. If till Thursday noon, the Israeli government not accept what they asked to release 50 something terrorists, they will start to kill the hostages. Third, there is no military plan in that short time. Fourth, the policy of Israel government at that day was we are not negotiate with the terrorists, but fight them. So what decision the government should take? After long hours of discussion, on Thursday morning, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister in the first term, told in his voice, we accept what the terrorists ask, and we will like to open negotiation for releasing terrorists who hold by us and other country, and you release the hostages. That was Thursday morning, 1st of July, 1976. And in 12 hours, everything changed secretly, of course. The negotiation moved on under the lights, but secretly, the army started to move on with the plan, with the military plan. We were back from Sinai Desert sometime Thursday afternoon, and at 6 o'clock, we got an order. Now, why I would like to stop a little bit on that time schedule. From the moment we got an order till we took off from Tel Aviv to Entebbe was less than 48 hours, less than 2 days. And in less than 2 days, it is impossible to prepare any military plan in a very good thinking on every possibilities. It's impossible. But at the end, we succeed. And it's a good question why. As we arrive from getting the order, our unit, the special force, Sayeret Matkal, I was a operation commander at that time. Yoni Netanyahu, Zichrono Levracha, was a commander of the unit. We sat in his office to discuss what is the right way to release the hostages. And we knew two things. First of all, from our experience, we understood that the question who is shooting first, it's a key for succeed. Because otherwise, the terrorists, if they realize that we are around, they will start to kill the hostages, as it happened in Munich massacre. 72, as it happened in a Savoy Hotel in Tel Aviv in 75, as it happened in a school in a northern town in Israel in 74. We knew the question of who is shooting first, it's a key for succeed. So how could we surprise the terrorists 4,000 kilometers from Israel, landing on unknown airport, to arrive to the front of the terminal without someone knowing? The idea of coming down as Idi Amin convoy came to the table. And at the beginning, it looked like James Bond movie. It wasn't look reality that we will be as Idi Amin soldiers and on the front of the Mercedes will be Idi Amin and so on. Nobody thought we can do it. But as the hours moved on, we thought that is the only way. There is no other way to surprise the terrorists. So now the most difficult was to find Mercedes. And believe me or not, we thought on two ways, the easy way and the difficulty one. The easy way was just to send two soldiers to the street of Tel Aviv sometime on Friday afternoon. It was quiet. Everyone prepared for Shabbat. And maybe we can find on the street Mercedes and we'll take it. And if we felt nobody will open a mouth about the car. And of course, if we succeed, everyone will shake hands and they forgot about it. But then we said, no, we can't do it. Somehow, something stopped us from bringing the Mercedes from the street. So we told the Mossad, you know, the Secret Service of Israel could do almost everything. And they told us there is a Mercedes somewhere in a garage in Tel Aviv. And we brought the Mercedes and we painted it black. It was a white old Mercedes. And we put a beautiful flag, Ugandan flag on the front and Ugandan number. And then just as soldiers, because we born in Israel. Nobody thought even about it. So one soldier said, do you know that the car in Uganda, the wheelchair is just opposite than in Israel? It's like in England. So we drove with the black Mercedes as the Israeli car. The driver sat just opposite as the normal car in Uganda. But the God was with us and we succeeded. On Saturday, 12:30, we drove to Tel Aviv airport. From the morning, the government sat to discuss the situation. On one hand, the negotiation moved forward, and the government want to get more and more hours with the negotiation. Secretly, they want to move with a military plan. So we were loaded on 4 Hercules, heavy carrier plane called Hercules, 240 soldiers, air crew, and doctors, 8 cars, and 1 gun. 240, quite a big number of force. On each one of the Hercules was about 50 soldiers. On the first Hercules who prepared to land in Entebbe, I was on the first Hercules. We were 55 soldiers, 3 cars, black Mercedes and 2 Land Rover Jeep, no windows, no air condition, no seat. The soldiers was beside the cars, some of them lying under the car. If someone was lucky, he found seat in the car. I was lucky. I could move into the cockpit and to the back space so I could see something where we are. But the most difficult, and you can understand it easily, there is no toilet in the plane. Try to imagine 9 hours flight without toilet. We empty bottle in case we need to pee. In that condition, we flew over to the most heroic event, operation in a Jewish modern history with an empty bottle. Could you imagine the ironic of the differentiation of the end of the result of it and the condition in the plane? At 1:30, the 4 Hercules took off from Tel Aviv airport toward Sharm el-Sheikh, the most south airbase at that time. The government said and want to short the time in case they give us a permission to land in Entebbe. Each Hercules took off and flew in a different direction. And we flew down only 30 meters above the ground. 30 meters, it's not that high. We're afraid that the radar surround Israel very easily could understand that if there is a Hercules on the air, probably the machineer planned something to do down in Entebbe. And only by one phone call, the terrorists could put track on the runway and everything end. So we flew only 30 meters. It was very hot day, 3rd of July, middle of the summer, a lot of turbulence. Many soldiers vomited. And I would like to say some word on that. First of all, the flight condition. We remember by the time when we were on the plane, sometimes it's a difficult condition and we vomit. The second thing that the days before was very intense and wasn't a regular time for sleep and eat and so on. So it was a body reaction or the unregular schedule of the last 2 days. But the third, you have to remember as well. It was a reaction of some of the soldiers for fear. We usually use the word heroic. I think personally, one of the heroic things is how do we control fear? It's not a question that we are not afraid from unknown situations. We ask each one of the soldiers if he would like to be on a plane. Everyone was voluntary to be on a plane, but still people afraid, unknown. Picture, how does it look, the airport in Entebbe? What will happen on a long flight in such a condition? No time to prepare, no pictures, nothing. At 3 o'clock, we landed in Sharm el-Sheikh. First of all, we went out to refresh a bit. to drink something, of course, and then 33 soldiers, the force who prepared to be on the black Mercedes and the two Land Rover, only 33 soldiers we were. We changed our uniform from Israeli uniform to Ugandan uniform, which saw in factory in Tel Aviv during Friday morning. So of course, not everyone was in a good size and a good shape and so on, but 33 soldiers with Ugandan uniform and Polish face. I'm a second generation of Holocaust survivors. In American movies, they put us with a black face, a painter face. It's nonsense. We were as usual, as I am now. And then Yoni Netanyahu wanted to say some word before we walk again to the plane, which is very important for the soldiers to understand what is the direction, to hear clearly the last word of the commander. Yoni Netanyahu was a very good commander to say shortly and clearly what is the mission. He said three things. First, he said, we are the best soldiers on the ground and we succeed to bring the hostages back home. He was quite sure nobody will stop us for succeed to bring the hostages back home. Then he said, remember, the key is who is shooting first. So nobody should stop. Doesn't matter if someone hit it on a way into the hole. We should run as quick as possible into the hole to be in contact with the terrorists and we kill them. And then he said the third thing, which was quite a surprise for me. He said it's a mutual responsibility of every Jew to help each other. It's a part of the Jewish identity. And we are doing what many Jews did before us. I was quite surprised, honestly. I was born in a kibbutz in 53 in a very communist ideology atmosphere, away from any Jewish belief. I was in 100% occupied myself on a Zionist belief of being Israeli, support the country, fighting for the country. But now he brought into my face a Jewish phrase. It wasn't clear to me at all at 3rd of July 76. Today I'm different and I will say some word about it. But then I couldn't understand what he wanted by saying this word. We walked to the plane. The plane was fully refueled and we took off for the next leg. The first one was so heavy and was, as I said, a very hot day, and hardly he could took off on the runway. Just because the end of the runway over there in Sharm el-Sheikh ended by rocket, where the water is 40 meters down, we found ourselves on the air. And the four Hercules, Israeli Hercules, took off and crossed into Saudi Arabia and did a long circle till they turned into the Red Sea. And for the next 3 hours, that is the real heroism. Four Hercules, in a very difficult flight, only 50 meters above the water level, In a front was sandstorm, in a silent communication, keep themselves together and moving down toward Entebbe. The pilots, they are the real heroes of the operation, to take us down and bring us back to Israel without any mechanical problem. So it means not only the pilot, but all the engineers who prepare the plane in Israel, they should get a medal as well. They stretch all the limitation of the plane and all the limitation of the flight. As we arrived close to Ethiopia line, it was 6:30 at night. We got a message from the government. Yes, we took the risk. You can land in Entebbe. They gave us a green light and welcome to land in Entebbe. But there is still few hours to arrive to Entebbe. Over there in Ethiopia, there is a high mountain, and as we arrive to the peak, 5,000 meters, a tropical storm welcomed us. And when I say tropical storm, I didn't know before how that looked like. It was terrible. 4 planes in the dark, and they took from side to side, up and down like a matchbox. The hills which hit the plane was a sound that someone shooting all the time. There is no way to escape. And it was 2 hours flight. It's a long hours. It's not a short period. Some of the cars released and we tied them. We are afraid if the plane lose balance very easily, we could find ourselves on the ground. Very easily, we can crash on the ground. But somehow, the pilot was the best pilot of the Israeli Air Force. And we moved forward. We were on the back. We can't do anything. What I remember, I was walking into the cockpit, and it was a beautiful picture, but I saw the face of the captain. He was afraid. What would be? How could he control the plane in such a condition? And then we arrived above Lake Victoria, and everything stopped. All the storm disappeared. And it was the last hour flight on a beautiful, smooth flight. 20 minutes before we prepared to land, the red light in the plane started to blink, which was a sign for us to take the best, to prepare the gun, and to be ready. Yoni Netanyahu walked to each one of the soldiers and shake hand or said some word. That was the last word, what he said. I was mostly occupied myself by thinking what I forgot to tell to someone, what I forgot to tell the other force on the other airports, because it was so many things to think about in such a short time. Everyone thought he could do the best, but there is a black spot where we can't cover in that short time. At 11.1, the first Hercules touched the ground in Entebbe. 11.1, only 1 minute delay of what the Air Force planned. I just moved from one stage to another to see the miracle. How many miracles was on this operation? There is no way to explain that everything was thinking in a head and it was okay. No, it was a miracle. At 11.1, we landed and the airport was full of lights. We surprised the Ugandan on the control tower. Later on, we knew that it took them time to understand that there is something wrong happening in the airport. Only when the third Hercules prepared to touch the ground, they light off the light. And it was about 20 or more minutes after we were landing, and we were by the end of the fighting over there in the control on the old terminal. As we arrived to the end of the runway, the Hercules stopped, and the black Mercedes and the two Land Rover, 33 soldiers only. I was on a jeep behind the Mercedes. We drove into the middle of Africa night. And it just was opposite from being in the plane, in the Hercules. It was quiet, beautiful sky, a lot of stars. Everywhere was green, no sirena, no cars driving toward us, no soldiers running, nothing but fresh air, beautiful night in Africa. And I became to a sort of dreaming and enjoying the situation. I wasn't a feeling of thinking, okay, soon I'm going to be fighting with the terrorists. As we arrived close to the terminal, two Ugandan soldiers, they stood on the road and signed by hand to stop. Yoni Netanyahu decided to kill them. One of them shot by silent pistol, the other one shot by gun. The sound of the shooting awake me to think, oh, it's going to be a catastrophe had it happened in the schools in the northern town in Israel. When we fell and 25 high school students killed. And now we are 250 meters from the terminal, probably the terrorists awake, and the catastrophe going to happen again without possibility to save their life. That was running in my head. We drove as quick as possible and we stopped the car about 40 meters from the main doors of the terminal. The plan was very simple. All of us, we put a white hat on our head, and one of the soldiers hold the megaphone to tell in Hebrew, English, and French, we are Israeli soldiers. Don't stood up. Don't run. We're afraid that it will be chaos in the room. It would be very, very difficult to find out who is terrorist and who is friend. We divided ourselves to 6 teams. Each one ran to his duty to different doors or to the second floor. My team duty was to be outside to be sure there is no soldiers or terrorists running from the back into the hall. As the soldiers went out from the cars, immediately very heavy fire opened from the control tower, which located next to the hall. Yoni Netanyahu, who was on the phone, hit it and fell down, but as we prepared before and knew from our experience, we should run. Only the doctor stopped and tried to treat him, to give him the best treatment he could in such a situation, and the rest ran into the hall. The first one who arrived into the hall, just before he crossed the door, someone from inside shooted, the windows broken, but he wasn't hit. As he crossed in, he saw the two Germans beside the door prepared to shoot, and he killed them. It took 5 minutes. When 7 terrorists killed, 20 Ugandan soldiers killed. They were mostly on the second floor. They had a restroom over there. Unfortunately, three hostages they killed during the fight. 2 of them probably by one of our soldiers. As the fire was slowed down, I came with a jeep and took Yoni Netanyahu to the medical plant. The doctor over there tried to do the best, but after some minutes, he was dying. As I drove back 600 meters in the middle of Africa, one car alone, the other force, which arrived with the other Hercules, stopped the fire from the control tower. The other force went down to the Army Air Base and rocket all the Ugandan Air Force, 11 MiGs. We are afraid that they would follow us on the way out from Entebbe. And my last duty was to lead the hostages from the terminal to the plane, wait to take them out from the airport. They were shocked. They went to sleep. They knew that the next day, 4th of July, their ultimatum end, and might be they will start to kill them. And then in the middle of the night, soldiers running in with Ugandan uniform but talking Hebrew. Some of them, and I talked with a few of them, some of them thought we are Ugandan soldiers and we are running in to kill them. And they tried to escape during the fight, not only because the crossing fire, but they didn't know who is friend and who is enemy. Mother hold their babies. The men holding a personal bed. Some of them without shoes. For me, as a second generation of Holocaust survivors, these pictures of Jews walking out without or with the same picture as I remember from albums or movies about the Holocaust time, immediately my thought took me to my family who murdered in Poland. And I thought to myself, how lucky I am that now I could save life of Jews. I could bring them safely home. My family hadn't got a chance of someone to save their life, but now, as a second generation, I could do it. And it was the first time for me that it was the meaning of being Jew. It was the meaning that I'm there, but I'm not alone. I'm not only Israeli. I'm not just in a military action. I represent for every Jew over there in Entebbe, all around the world, as well as in Israel, what is mean mutual responsibility. 52 minutes from the moment the first Hercules touched the ground. The first Hercules with the hostages took off from Entebbe. Only 52 minutes. The last man, where I was, took off after another 10 or 12 minutes, something like that. And we lost some minutes because one of the soldiers was missed. And we were sure that we are not going to take off from Entebbe until we'll find it. And then we understood it was only a mistake counting. But that is another aspect, to bring everyone safely, alive or dead. We are not leaving anyone behind us. And it wasn't something that someone taught me, someone told me, but it was part of our blood. As a Jew, probably that is my explanation. We landed in Nairobi and the plane refueled, and we took the flight back home to where we were. Somewhere in the early morning, the BBC stopped their program and announced the Israeli force released the hostages from Entebbe. And they were the first one who announced that to the world. We were somewhere above Sudan, and we are afraid that now the Sudan Air Force, either the Egypt Air Force, could hit us. And we went down and we flew again very low to where Sharm el-Sheikh. As we arrived close to the airbase over there, a jet fighter plane followed us as a guard up till Tel Aviv Airport. At 9:30, the first Hercules with the hostages landed in airbase in near Tel Aviv. All the hostages they took to the hall. They checked by doctors, gave them something to eat. Some of them took to hospital, and they walked back to the Hercules. And 10:30, they landed in Tel Aviv airport. The airport was crowded with thousands of Israelis. It's amazing. Israelis always tell to each other, look, let's go to the airport. Let's go and see the situation. You know Israeli, how that work. Even in the middle of the night, someone knock on the door. I crossed with the Hercules above the airport in the picture of thousands of Israelis who were there still with me. And we were landed in the airbase, and we drove to our base. The new commander wait for us, and we go 24 hours free time to see the family. And the next day, we sat in our unit, in our base. The next day was a funeral of Yoni Netanyahu. We wait an extra day till his parents arrived from the state. And after 3 days, I was occupied in a new mission. I thought to myself, okay, I did it, we succeed, and now we should do the next one. It wasn't something that I thought it's so dramatic. Okay, we flew more hours. We were 1 hour on the ground over there in Entebbe, but that's all. What big story on that. And for the next 3 months, we were occupied in a very secret and dramatic operation for the security of the state. And I thought, okay, nothing to think. The country was so happy. The world was so happy. The Jewish world was so happy. People share with me stories which I couldn't believe that is happening. It just brings me back to what I didn't know. And for 40 years, I was away from remember something till 2016 when we prepared for 40 years anniversary and we sat and discussed different things about it. And then I got a telephone call from Copenhagen, and the rabbi over there asked me to come and share the story. And since then, in the last 4 years, till March 2020, I was around the world in quest for all different communities, schools, parliament, and so on, to share the story. And I understood one important thing deeply. This operation represents one of the strongest meanings of our connection. The State of Israel and the Jews who live abroad in the diaspora. The Jews, in their history, always travel from one place to another. Twice they tried to establish a new center, the first temple and the second temple, and always they move from one place to another, sometimes because spirituality, sometimes because people told them to go out, different reasons. And today, it is symbolically the third temple, the existing of the State of Israel, should give to all of us in London, in Melbourne, in New York, and we are in Israel, the opportunity to remember two things: that we are one nation, is one history, is one future. Without remember that we support each other. And the State of Israel, it's your state. It's not my state, it's our state. You are part of that. Doesn't matter where you live. It's your state just as my state. And whatever happened, and this year, it's not an easy month for so many communities. Anti-Semitism rise up again. The anti-Israel mixed with anti-Semitism, the PDS and many others, the youngsters around the world ask themselves, what is the right for the Jews to have a state? And I think personally, as a Jew, there is no other chance for us to survive in the world without the existing of the State of Israel. And I would like to end by one word which I wrote on a book which I gave to Ruby Rivlin, the president of the State of Israel. I flew to Entebbe as an Israeli Zionist officer in the most elite unit of the IDF. And I flew back from Entebbe as a Jew. But it took me 40 years to understand that meaning. Thank you.
Rami, I cannot tell you, you looking at the time that is in Eretz Israel now for you, you giving of yourself over all these decades, Hebrew anniversary of the hijacking is literally Hayom, 45 years ago, and you giving of yourself over all these decades, what you did then, what you carry in terms of the pride and the unity and the overall strength of what it means for us to be a people has been truly inspiring and just makes us feel this gratitude and appreciation of being part of such a beautiful people and having had you as such a fantastic representative and chayal on all of our behalf. So, first of all, I'm sure you have heard this many times, but just Yasher Kayach and thank you for all that you've done, not just for them, but for carrying. We say Hine Mato Manayim. Obviously, the song is very famous from the film, but Shevat Achim Gam Yachad. You know, us all sitting together. The hour is a bit late, but if there is anyone who wants to take this opportunity to either share your own words for Rami or to ask any questions, now is a unique forum to be able to do so. Maybe some of you will remember where you were when you heard about the hostages being freed and safe, or how you felt during that time. Whatever it is that you want to share, now is the forum to do so briefly over the next few minutes. From the Bentleys, I know we have always a willing contribution.
Two things. The first is I was on your kibbutz.
Oh, really?
In 1965.
Wow.
Yeah. As I was on the Israel tour in those days, right up against the Syrian border, and the first thing they showed us were the trenches where to go to in case something came over.
Yeah, the bankers. Yes.
Yeah, yes, and I picked apples on your kibbutz, but
that's great.
It was.
Yes.
Okay. I thank you for your talk, which was brilliant. It was brilliant. I have a very light question for you. There have been 3 films about Entebbe.
Yes.
Which actor portrayed you the best?
Okay. I will tell you now because you were in the kibbutz in 65, so easily you can understand what is mean the word propaganda.
Yes.
No, it's a Russian word, mostly. So in 76, the country, the Israel, still occupied on the Russian politics, culture, way of reaction. So it took 3 months after the operation when the government gave a right to Menachem Golan,
Yes.
the producer, to make a film. But the film was a propaganda. They knew that the next year there is an election, and that is a golden egg. So they create something which is not the true at all. Of course, the frame is the same, but it was totally a propaganda, and but probably all of you remember the next year, 77, Menachem Begin took power. Even though the Entebbe was so successful, Menachem Begin in May took power in the government of Israel. So that's the first feeling. The last one,
Yeah,
made 3 years ago, 77, so it's already 2017. It's 4 years almost. And that just represents how much the world changed toward Israel. Why I said that? Because this movie just turned all the story to show how innocent they were, the terrorists. What do they like? The only people who want to live in a peaceful land with a peaceful life with the Jews, They don't do anything. Then in the middle of the night, Israeli soldiers, me, as a terrorist, land over there in Entebbe and kill them. They always give water to the old people. They help them to go down from the plane. This movie went out from the market after 3 months because if you don't show the people the true people represent by their food, and it went out. And the last, it was for me with another two American movie. It's Americans. They wanted to make money from that, so they just to make it too much heroism, you know. So it's not. If you know there is a story, it's just moving for one. Each one of them represent different light on different aspects of the operation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry,
I would like to say one more thing for us to remember. I never fought against Palestinians to kill them. Sometimes the situation put me for killing, but we are, as a Jew, teach ourselves in all the centuries for saving life, for bringing life to others, to help each other. Israel sent to so many different places around the world force and medical support if there is a disaster. In each community, there is a support each other for different reasons. We are not, because our history probably, we are not a people for killing. Sometimes we have to save our life. And by that, sometimes, unfortunately, it's a tragedy of ourselves. We kill people, sometimes children, but it's so difficult to understand that for our surviving, children killed. But what is the choice? We would like to survive. First of all, like you, people blame us, not Israeli, as a Jew. For what? We are trying to save life of everyone. That is our spirit in my understanding, Rabbi. Do I right?
That's right. It's a mitzvah. Lawrence, did you want to say something? Lawrence Goland. Sorry, I can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, Kol HaKavod, Kol Torah. Did you know for sure that you would be allowed to refuel in Kenya? And what was the plan if you were not allowed to? And the other question is, even then, the Hercules was a very old aircraft, but it seems uniquely capable of doing the job. And indeed, is there any other aircraft that could have done that?
Let's start with the first question. The plan was to refuel in Entebbe. We took 6 soldiers with a pump, and they knew exactly where the plane refueled in the airport. And the plan was to refuel over there. We knew that will take time, about 45 minutes each Hercules. So it's much longer time to be on the ground, which is not safe, of course. During the days in Kenya, secretly, we developed a good relation with Christian groups who helped a lot to open Kenya to be a big base in case we need help. And one of the things what they prepared, the airport over there in Nairobi, the international airport, to refuel at Saturday evening a plane with 20 Israeli soldiers landed over there and opened a hospital tent in case will be a lot of casualties. And when we were already on the ground, the information that we can refuel in Nairobi arrived because they afraid to tell it earlier because very easily someone can inform the Ugandan that we are planning something. So only when we were on the ground we got the message. What funny things on that, as we landed in Nairobi, some of the soldiers didn't know that there was change on the plane. And they saw, again, Ugandan soldiers, black soldiers, surround the plane, and they were sure that we were landed again in Entebbe. They didn't know why, and they start to ask and worry what happened. And about the Hercules, at the end we succeed. To say that it was the old plan might be, but I'm not sure that I'm expert to answer. It's looked to me that 76, this plan was still in a very good condition. And we have to remember one thing. At 81, the American planned a few months a similar operation to release diplomats who caught by the Iranian on the American embassy over there. And they fell. It was a catastrophe. And they didn't fail because they were not a good pilot or good soldiers. They didn't fail because there are not enough time to plan. Somehow, you need something more. So if you believe in God, you say, God, follow us. And if you don't, if you're secular, you can say it was a good luck. In that way, either on that way, we need an extra something to bring us to Entebbe and to bring all of us together with the hostages back to Israel and then each one of them to whatever home was. We need something extra. Otherwise, it's impossible to explain how that succeeds. Only 4 hostages killed, 1 soldiers wounded seriously, so in Eshko, and 1 soldier, Yoni Netanyahu, who died. That all, of course, so each one of the family, their life changed. But if you look at that, for us, for the nation, for the country, and for the world, it is nobody can understand how we succeed.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. We are coming towards the end of our talk. Is there anyone with a final question before we just round off with some added things? It has been a very it's a story that all of us are so familiar with, and we bandy around the words hero, and maybe when speaking to someone like you and to the people who were involved in this in such a heroic and a desperate venture, it reminds us of what heroes really are. So, on behalf of our community, behalf of the diaspora, we thank you. We thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. And please God, may we began this evening by saying the Dare to Dream, celebrating modern Israeli heroism. May we always hold our heads up so high to be part of Am Yisrael. We fervently believe that we as a people Am Yisrael Chai. We are an eternal people, and we will have bumps along the way, and we will never, and we will always have people reminding us that we're challenging us, but we know who we are and we know what we can do, and with the help of God, may we always be matzliach and successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And as Jews said, they said usually next year in Jerusalem, and I said shortly in London.
Amen. Looking forward. Good
Yes,
night.
I will come.
Good night, everyone.